Kia ora to those of you that have joined with us this morning. It's our great pleasure to today welcome Brent Ireland from Collab Digital to share his wisdom, his skills, and just give us a bit of a starting point and overview on social media. I attended one of his courses probably 3 or 4 years ago. It was a whole day course and learnt so much. And since that point, have now managed the A&A Facebook page for three or 4 years. I post daily, and Brent has had a look at the Facebook A&A Facebook page, and I've also sent him some other social media pages to have a look at that he's got some themes that he's found happening, and we're really delighted to have you share those today. There is a presentation that will be shared, and we are recording today's video so you can watch it again. If you just make yourself familiar with the question and answer box at the bottom of the panel, we'll have time for questions at the end. So my name is Alison Pask, and I'm pleased today to introduce you to Brent Ireland from Collab. Away you go, Brent.
Hello, and thanks for having me. So what we're going to run through is a social media workshop structure. And look, the key intention of today really is to bring you up to speed with all the big changes that have been happening, but at the same time, talk about how we need to be approaching social media as a whole. Because at the end of the day, look, we don't want to be putting all this time, effort, and energy into creating content and posting if we're not really getting what we need from it. So part of today is really about identifying what your objective is, and then how do we amplify our messages and how do we get a better result from the time, effort, and energy that we're putting in. So I do have the structure of a PowerPoint, which, to be honest, sounds a little bit boring, but I can assure you that it is not. We have this to run through. Sorry, can you see that?
Yes, that's perfect.
So we've got the structure of this workshop to run through. Now, look, we want it to be fairly interactive. So if quite a few of you have questions on a specific slide that I'm covering, then do feel free to drop those questions in, and we can make a stop and kind of answer a few of those then, but we will also have a Q&A at the end as well. So first and foremost, quick introduction to Collab. We're established in 2016. We're a specialist social media agency. There's kind of 3 sides to the business. There's social media management, so we look after clients in Australia, Middle East, New Zealand, Singapore, the UK, and we're managing probably a couple of $1 million a year in ad spend across probably around about 150 different clients, pretty much from every industry. And so the cool thing is we kind of get to work with clients big and small. So even if we're working with a small budget, or even if we're doing things only organically, the challenge for us is pretty much to get a result, right? So everything that we're going to cover today is based on what we activate and what we do every single day. So there's none of it is kind of theory. It's all based on the action that we're working on daily. Next side of the business is social media training. So we're lucky enough to have traveled around the country. We've done probably 300 or 400 workshops now. Biggest one was in Christchurch, 500 people. To date, we've had probably 8,000 people that were taken through some form of training. And the last side is content creation. So it's all about us understanding what we need to be creating in terms of a visual to get a good result. So that's Collab in a nutshell. To give you an idea of the scale of, I guess, how we're working and what we're working at, this is a bit of an overview of probably a third of our clients. Is everything from really big business all the way down to mum and dad, little restaurants. So like I say, we've got a bit of scale and we're doing things kind of in every direction at the moment. Cool. So the agenda, what are we going to actually cover today? What we're going to cover is, first and foremost, why social media. So what we're going to look at is some top line stats around where social media is currently at. And we're going to look at usage inside that as well. Second, we're going to do a platform update. So there's only 3 slides in platform update. It's really about answering the big question of where we should be and why. And you're going to see some really interesting numbers within that. The whole point of the platform update really is to allow you to understand where you can get better bang for buck. And if we are time poor, which we all are, no doubt, how do we get the best bang for buck? The third part is all around best practice. So we've kind of broken it in 2. The first part is around organic strategy and how we get the best result from an organic strategy. So when we say a strategy, it's pretty much how we use social media to communicate the messages that we've got effectively, really. So managing a community, how often we post, when to post and what to post. Probably the big questions, to be honest. And then the last section is getting bang for buck with a small budget. So how we create campaigns is quite different to how most would create campaigns, and we want to steer you in the right direction. So put it this way, if you're boosting posts, hopefully after today, you won't boost posts anymore, and we'll explain why as we work our way through. Like I say, if you do have questions along the way, please do feel free to ask. I anticipate that me running through this presentation will probably take around about 30 minutes, and that leaves some time for Q&A as well. Cool. So first and foremost, why social media? If we look at audience usage here in New Zealand of the internet, 89% of Kiwis are actually online. So with that said, look, majority of us actually use the internet, and we're using it for several different reasons. If we look at what's happened in the last 12 months, in specific with lockdowns and COVID and whatnot, we actually saw usage increase. And in fact, people that previously would kind of notoriously say, no, I'll never shop online, and no, I won't buy my groceries online, all of a sudden began embracing it, right? So what we've seen is this usage increase. And in fact, I think we probably progressed maybe 5 years in the space of a couple of months. And we haven't seen that slow down. So with that said, the internet as a whole, in terms of what we can do, is continuing to grow. And as part of that, social media is a massive part of our daily routine and habit. The big question today is, of the 89% of Kiwis online, how many use social media? Still in the 80s, 82%. This has actually increased ever so slightly over the last 6 months as well. So what we're seeing is a continued uptake of platforms like Facebook and Instagram specifically. They are the big 2, the behemoths. But with that said, we're seeing newcomers to the market as well. So platforms like TikTok, which we can discuss today as well. If we break it down even further, in New Zealand, roughly 3.6 million active monthly social media users. So our population is obviously a little over 5 mil now. Look, we're looking at the majority of New Zealand being active on social media. The demographic is broad, 17 to 55. So we're not super tight on a specific demographic. It does go younger, and of course it does go older. 17 to 55 are the active demographic. So these ones are active daily, all right? And in terms of how long they're spending each day, around about 2 hours and 36 minutes. And, you can only imagine what happened through lockdown. Obviously, this number skyrocketed, right? Usage online as a whole of social media and on-demand watching services like Netflix was absolutely through the roof. So that average time spent isn't obviously all in one block. It's spread throughout the day. And it kind of, it ebbs and flows in terms of that activity and what people are actually doing. With that said, us paying attention to, I guess, what we're posting and what we're asking people to do when they see our post should be influenced by the time that we are posting. So if we're posting first thing in the morning and we want people to, watch a video or digest a big article, we have to understand that as humans, we're creatures of habit. We have a routine to get on with. So if I'm gonna, if you expect me to watch a video and I've got to get ready for work, or in reality, it's probably not going to happen. So again, understanding usage and behavior is probably just as important as creating a good quality post. If you're wondering, about how to best interpret that, you only really have to look at your own behavior online to really understand how you should be kind of framing your whole social media approach. If we look at that usage, it's predominantly mobile, and we're seeing this increase again as well, right? So anytime we're creating content, what we need to be conscious of is most of the audience is actually looking at the content that we create on a device like this, not so much on a desktop, okay? So when it comes to creating content and creating good quality content, we need to be thinking mobile first. We need to be thinking content that is mobile friendly, because the audience and the majority of the audience that are going to see that content will be viewing on a mobile device. So in summary, look, that's why social media. First and foremost, it's a beast. It has massive cut through, and it provides a huge opportunity for us to grow and engage. If we look at social media and we compare it to traditional media, there's several differences straight away. The problem with some traditional media is that if we want to communicate a message, well, straight away, look, money is going to have to change hands, okay? And it's not cheap. So if we look at running a radio campaign, if we want to do that for a month, depending on what market you're in, you could spend $1,000 to $5,000, right? If we're on social media and we wanted to communicate a message, well, first and foremost, when I communicate that message, I don't have to spend as much, okay? Social media inevitably is a pay-to-play platform now, but with that said, it's not the case of spending $1,000 or $5,000. I could get away with spending $50, and I could target only the audience that I want to target in a specific demographic and area that I want to. So straight away, massive differences. So look, if we're still asking a question about why social media, hopefully we've answered that today. Cool. The next section that we're going to look at is a platform update. And like I say, there's really only 3 key slides in this. The first one is acknowledging the fact that Facebook is #1 and absolutely by a country mile, okay? 2.7 billion monthly active users globally. Here in New Zealand, 3.7 million. So it's about 3.68 monthly active users. So if we compare that to our population number, it's huge, right? Facebook is kind of ingrained in our daily behaviors and habits now. The reason that Facebook has grown to the point that it kind of is at now, it's kind of reached full-blown momentum of growth, is really around functionality, okay? So what it offers us is the opportunity to not only connect with our friends and our family, and we can do that in several different ways through Messenger and pages and groups and events and things like that, but also businesses, all right? So we can, we've all got brands and businesses that we align to, because, these are things that are engraved in our daily habits, our routines. It could be the local cafe, it could be the shampoo brand that you use. It offers a chance for us to connect with those brands on a different level and kind of create this bond with them, right? And we can bond with them through the content that they can create, and obviously the way that we then engage with that content. It's all about functionality on Facebook, and what we're continuing to see is an increase, right? So if we compare platforms like Twitter, they've kind of stood still, where if we look at a platform like Facebook, it continues to innovate, right? And change, and there's new ways. And look, some of these changes, they can certainly be a pain, and at times, even for us in an agency world, look, some of these changes mean that what we were doing last week or a month ago is not what we'll do today. And to be honest, that's pretty standard now. We're used to that. But with that said, as much of a pain as it is, it still gives us the biggest bang for buck, both through paid advertising and our organic efforts as well. And quite simply because the majority of the audience is there. Cool. In that second position, also owned by Facebook, is Instagram. So Instagram is a platform that's very different to how Facebook is used, all right? So if we think about Instagram, really it's a mobile-only platform. It does have a desktop version, but to be honest, it's like looking at a PDF. There's not really much you can do with it. Can't actually create content from it. So with that said, mobile really is where Instagram shines the most. Here in New Zealand, 1.9 million monthly active users. So a pretty big decrease compared to Instagram, to Facebook, sorry. So with that said, when it comes to Instagram, it is a visual first platform. So if we think about the way that we post on Facebook, for example, we get to add a little bit of context through our caption, and then following that caption is the image. If we look at Instagram, it's the other way around. So the image actually needs to capture people first and foremost. And if that image then captures the audience, they're more likely to then read that caption or consume the words that are below it. That said, look, it does provide challenges, because if we're thinking about this platform being visual first, it really does lean towards curated content. And when we say curated content, it's content that is sharp, it is quality, high quality is probably the key takeaway. And really what's setting the bar for that is there are Instagram profiles out there that are incredibly curated, you know, and this whole world of influencers has flourished on Instagram, which to a degree is, in my mind, somewhat detrimental. I've got many opinions on influencers, and if you have any questions on that, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. We have spent a hell of a lot of money on influencers. Is it worth it? Has it influenced decisions? Not necessarily. So yeah, plenty of questions I can answer on that one. So yeah, look, Instagram in that second position, certainly a big audience, but obviously not the same size as Facebook. If we start looking at some of these other platforms, you know, like Pinterest and Twitter, we're down to hundreds of thousands, and in fact, a couple of 100,000, 300,000 for Twitter here in New Zealand. So straight away, if we compare 300,000 for Twitter versus Facebook's 2.7 million, you can see this massive shift. And look, if we're time poor and if we need our content to be seen and to connect and to resonate and to actually allow us to achieve our objectives, we need as many eyes as possible. And that's where these two platforms certainly win. The last one that I'll talk about is really the platform that's different, right? So all other platforms really are B2C. They are designed for us to be able to communicate with consumers as a whole. But with that said, if we do want to kind of play in the B2B space, so if we do want to engage other businesses or business people or people with, you know, within specific professions, then LinkedIn is really the only platform that actually provides that opportunity. It's different to the rest in the sense that it's the only platform that we can really have a hard conversation. And when I say a hard conversation, look, it is a commercial conversation. The audience on LinkedIn are more receptive to sales-based messaging or, you know, that harder style of conversation. They're more open to it. Whereas if I had that conversation in terms of creating that style of content on Facebook or Instagram, the consumer-based audience will switch off, all right? So again, look, it's probably not for everyone, but some of you certainly within this webinar would want to communicate in that space. And that could even be from a personal standpoint to grow your own professional profile, or it could be targeting a specific business or a profession or, you know, a corporate, whatever that may be. This platform really is the opportunity to do that. It is a platform that faces challenges. However, look, if you're on LinkedIn, you'll be familiar with, you know, some of the interesting quirks that come with that platform. Look, it's a platform that's designed to allow you to establish connections with business people or people in, you know, your field of work or industry. To be able to, you know, have a bit of two-way conversation with. Now, the problem is if we're connecting with people who are outside of who we want to be connecting with, and that could be geographically or even from, you know, someone selling something that we never have an interest in, and we're connecting with those people, what we start to do is dilute the stuff that we're seeing on that platform because it's not really relevant to us. So key takeaway with LinkedIn is don't just accept everyone that adds you, and don't just connect with anyone that pops up. Use it as a tool to connect with people that are relevant to what you're trying to do or communicate, or at the same time learn from. So that's platforms. 3 slides, nice and straightforward. Do we have many questions coming through yet? Cool. No worries at all. So the next part that we're going to talk about is organic strategy. So look, the reason, first and foremost, organic is obviously free. So it's all of the stuff that we do for free. And when we say strategy, look, we live in a day and age where, look, if we don't actually have a strategy, we don't have a plan, then we are kind of putting a blindfold on and hoping that what we, the direction that we're heading in is the right direction. So what we need to do is take the blindfold off and actually lay down a bit of a pathway, a bit of a plan. The first step, and this is probably for me one of the most important steps, is setting yourself up for success. And what this actually means is creating a base that the audience is going to be receptive to. So the problem is that for a lot of pages that we see and that we look at, the layout of the page is incorrect. The imagery is poor quality. The logo is a blurry image that, you know, doesn't even fit the right sizing. The cover photo is covered in text. And really just overall, the content is inconsistent. Okay, so what that's doing is straight away, if the audience is seeing this content, we've got red flags popping up all over the show. And at the end of the day, look, if a red flag is going to pop up, we're reducing the chance of our content ever cutting through. And that's a massive issue. So what we do need to do is ensure that we are setting ourselves up for success. So that's making sure that our profiles look good, they present well, all of the contact information is correct. If we're sending someone to a website, we're sending them to the right page. And, you know, and you'd be very surprised at how often we click a learn more button on a Facebook page or an Instagram page and it bounces off to a website where the URL is incorrect, and so obviously nothing pops up, right? So straight away, it's you going through and giving your page a bit of an audit to make sure that the foundation is right. Because if we've got a good foundation to work with from the get-go, then we're starting to head in the right direction. So that's the first step, setting yourself up for success. The second step is identifying what your actual objective is. Now, the problem is if we don't have an objective, right, again, the blindfold's back on. So us setting an objective is about determining what we actually want to achieve. In terms of what we want to achieve, it can go in several directions. And to be honest, it can be a slight mix, okay? Do we want awareness of who we are and what we do? Do we actually want to sell stuff? Do we want to funnel traffic to a website? Do we want to showcase culture? There's several different objectives that we can achieve. If we're trying to achieve all of them, the audience will get confused because at the end of the day, the messaging will be very different, okay? So us identifying our objectives, so this is the set thing that we actually want social media to achieve for us, will then influence every single thing that we do going forward. So every single post would then tie back to that objective. And again, look, you can have more than one objective. Don't think that you're tied or restricted to just one. As long as you understand what your objectives are, and as long as you are then creating content to achieve those objectives, and there's a consistent structure to that, then that's perfectly fine. The problem is if we don't have an objective, what ends up happening is inconsistencies across the board, okay? We don't have a plan. We are creating posts and content that don't kind of flow. There's no kind of connection between them. The audience then gets confused. They then disengage. The red flags are up, and all of our efforts are then in vain, right? And when I go back to us talking about us being time poor, that's kind of the worst thing that can happen, because what then happens inevitably is that we then back out and we say, oh, we know this doesn't work. Social media is a waste of time, and we then miss the big opportunity. So this is something that I really want you to have a strong think about, and I want you to kind of go away from today and look, you could even think already that, oh yeah, I know what our objective is, or I think I know what our objective is. You do need to define that, and then everything in your kind of social media toolkit needs to tie back to that objective. So I hope that one makes sense. Sorry, where's my clicker? When we talk about content, and the phrase "content is king" has been around for a long time, and to be honest, it hasn't changed. Content is still king. When we talk about red flags, the easiest way to fly a red flag for the audience and to disengage them is by creating content that makes them kind of raise an eyebrow, right? And that could be poor quality copy. It could be copy that doesn't quite hit the mark, so in terms of the wording that you use, all the way through to the visual that you're using. Look, if you're sharing memes, if you're only sourcing all of your imagery as stock imagery off the internet, or you're using poor quality mobile photos, we're kind of missing the point, right? Specifically on Instagram, this whole thing is kind of amplified, right? That said, look, there's nothing wrong with using your phone to create content. So specifically creating videos or, taking photos. It's really just paying attention to when you take that photo and making sure that, cool, does this photo actually communicate what I need it to communicate? And again, thinking about perspectives and what we actually need to be capturing within that photo. investing a little bit of time, energy, and effort into, the quality of content is probably equally as important as setting that initial objective, right? Because once we know the objective, this is then the visual that will allow us to communicate and achieve that objective. So content is still king. It's something that shouldn't be shied away from. What we'll talk about as we work our way through as well as stories. So look, stories are a different beast. So if you think about the way that we post, and if we post onto our page, that sits on our page until, time goes by, and we can obviously delete that, but otherwise it just sits there ongoing, right? A story is a little different because the story will sit there for a 24-hour period and then disappear. That said, stories are probably our chance to step behind the scenes a little. We can be a little bit uncut. It can be less curated. It can be a little bit more raw. It doesn't need to be as sharp as such. So again, slight differences in the content, but again, really content is still king. So we don't want you to shy away from that. So what is good content? First and foremost, there's 4 key aspects when we create content. The first one is it must be relevant to the audience, okay? So straight away, we could think we are sitting on $1 million piece of content that's going to do an amazing job. The first question we need to ask ourselves is this actually relevant to the audience that we are trying to engage or communicate to? So if you think about, talking about healthy eating and healthy living, look, that's a key content pillar, right? And I'll talk about pillars as we work our way through, but it's making sure that it is relevant to the audience, okay? So making sure that they can align with what we're trying to communicate. You would be amazed at how many times we see pages that are just posting completely out into a different field of what they need to be doing. And again, this is all the red flag situation starting to pop up. There needs to be a tie back to the business or the brand or kind of what you're trying to do and communicate, right? So when we say relevant to the business, it needs to tie back to us. There needs to be some sort of connection there, because otherwise it ends up just being a good piece of content that's relevant to the audience, but kind of not directly related to what we do. And again, it can be a little bit confusing. When we talk about high quality visuals, again, this can be professional photo, or it can be professional video, but at the same time, look, there's nothing wrong with taking a photo or a video on your phone. It's all about the first 2 things, most importantly, and then obviously we back that up with quality. The last part, and this is often the hardest part because look, we're not all great copywriters. The caption should be concise and well written. Now, concise is an interesting one because recently Facebook have made a change to the algorithm on both Facebook and Instagram. Okay, so what this actually, this change is actually, it's a pretty massive change. Now, if you asked me 6 months ago, how long a caption can be, I would have said, look, short and sharp and to the point. What Facebook have recognized and Instagram have recognized over the last while is that audiences aren't engaging the same way that they used to. So they're not liking, they're not commenting, and they're not sharing as many times as what they used to. So obviously they've noticed this big decrease. Now, what they're actually doing with the algorithm, they've changed the algorithm ever so slightly to look at audience behavior even more, okay? Now, one of those changes is around the time spent on a post. So what this is if I'm going to sit there and I'm going to read a caption in its entirety, and I'm going to spend a lot of time on that post, and let's say it's a long caption, that is now actually classed as an engagement, and it's equally as I guess, highly ranked as a like, a comment, or a share. So what we do know is that people aren't doing that as much. They're not liking, commenting, or sharing, but they are still absorbing content. They are reading captions. So again, if I go back 6 months ago and I said short, sharp captions are great, well, now that's kind of shifted because a longer caption could potentially mean that time spent on a single post would be longer. That's then classed as an engagement. The algorithm recognizes that and then allows us to reach those people more often. So the algorithm is a bit of a tricky one. And again, look, it is changing all the time, but that is probably the biggest change that has happened in a long time with the algorithm. So time spent on posts. So with that said, look, yes, short captions are great, but have a play with writing slightly long form or longer form captions as well. So you can flesh out a little bit more of the story, highlight a little bit more information within those captions. So that's what good content is. It's all about relevance, quality, and then obviously, the quality of that copy as well. Cool. Captions. When we talk about captions and we flesh this out even more so, look, it needs to be compelling, right? We are in a situation on social media where there is content overload. So for us to cut through, look, we can't fluff around. We need to add value, all right? In terms of the key steps with writing a good caption and what needs to be included, one thing that we're big on is getting our point across in the first sentence, right? So often it's a call to action, or we're asking a question, or it's a statement. And really that is to hook people, okay? So they can kind of get, okay, oh, this is, I'm interested in this, right? Or at the same time, they can say, oh, this isn't for me. At the end of the day, we want to hook people in there and there, and we can do that in the first few words, right? We can include a call to action, or we can ask a question in that first part, or it can be within the rest of the caption. There needs to be some sort of value, and I think for what you're doing specifically, for most of you, look, there is an education piece that you can add. There is value that you can add. There's information that you can share, and I think specifically around health and nutrition, there is so much commentary, and the problem with it, I think people are confused, and people are confused on what commentary to pay the most attention to, or what's relevant, or what's real, or what's true. And unfortunately, misinformation on the internet is probably more common than correct information, right? So in terms of adding value, look, there has to be something in it for the audience in terms of what each of you are doing. There's educational pieces that you can share. And obviously within reason, there are some restrictions that are in place, but with that said, look, as long as you're in line with those and you are adding value to a degree, then fantastic. Social media is about connecting with people, right? So if we are writing robotic captions, so captions that they kind of sound like, an instruction manual on how to put together a desk, then we're kind of missing the point with good captions. So what we want you to do is write like a human, almost conversational to a degree. Again, there will be some formalities that are required for some of the captions that you will be writing. But with that said, it's really about making sure that you're writing in a conversational way that will resonate with the audience. The use of emojis is good, because what it does straight away is it adds context and it lightens the mood. Okay, so if we put a smiley emoji within a caption, it'll change the way that caption is actually read and the tone that it's read in. Okay, so they're kind of playful, but at the same time, with that said, there's so many different emojis that can add context. It's really just about finding the right ones. Consider caption length and practice word economy. So not every caption can be short. At the same time, not every caption needs to be long. So, when I talk about that algorithm change, it isn't now the case of writing only long captions. It's about choosing which captions you could flesh out a little bit more and tell a little bit more of the story of. And then, the next one could follow up. The next post could be a shorter caption. So that's captions in a nutshell. Okay, so equally as important as I say, the visual. At the same time, not all the best copywriters. So look, if that's the case, begin light, practice word economy, and then get yourself comfortable with writing good quality captions. Cool. In terms of post frequency, this is an interesting one, because with algorithm changes over the last kind of 18 months, this has changed. So previously we would have said, look, the audience is active daily, and they certainly are. So we really should be too. We should be posting fairly frequently, both stories and timeline posts or page posts. Now we are all about quality over quantity, because there is mass saturation of content. Look, there's more users than ever before using social media, both from a personal and a business standpoint. We need content that cuts through. And if we are in a situation where posting every single day, we can create fatigue. Okay. And again, if we create fatigue, the red flags fly up again. In an ideal world, posting day on, day off is pretty much the optimum frequency. So with that said, it is less posts than you would have previously needed, but at the same time, for a lot of you, it is actually more. So 3 to 4 times is essentially that day on, day off structure. That said, stories, look, they can be a little bit more frequent. And if you're familiar with stories, you would see that, look, at times, certain people are probably guilty of this, of creating too many stories. But with that said, you can certainly be more frequent. They are less formal. They don't need to be as structured. And you can have a little bit more fun with them. But that's our ideal post frequency. So the good part is it's not necessary to post every single day. You can trim that back. It is quality over quantity, absolutely. In terms of third-party apps that will help you do your job even better. Now, most of you will be familiar with Canva. Look, it's a great app. It allows you to create high-quality content really, really quickly. Okay, so Canva, it's across desktop and mobile. Most of you probably would be familiar with it. It will allow you to create customized stories. In a nutshell, it's essentially a graphic designer at your fingertips. Okay, and previously, you know, if we had a photo or if we needed a graphic created and, you know, we were going to pay a graphic designer $100 an hour to do so, we can do exactly that using an application like Canva in this day and age. And it's super simple. It's at our fingertips and we get control. It's something that I certainly do encourage the use of, because you can customize a look and a feel that is completely consistent, and then you can keep coming back to that. So straight away, it allows you to achieve a little bit of efficiency, because what you're doing is you are being consistent with your content. And again, that's one of the kind of must-haves, right, when we talked about keeping the audience on board. Some of the content that we create, specifically from a photo standpoint, may include things that we don't want in that photo. So Snapseed, again, is kind of an extension of Canva. It allows you to edit photos the same way that someone using Photoshop would. Incredibly easy to use. Pretty straightforward in terms of what it can do. Allows you to customize and kind of go further with your content. The last one in the mix is Later. Okay, so Later is a third-party scheduling tool. So what it does is it actually allows you to schedule posts across Facebook and Instagram and some other platforms as well. The reason that we encourage scheduling is, again, this is all about forward planning, all right? And what we're about to talk about is content themes and pillars. When we schedule ahead, and look, in an ideal world, you at any given time would be a week ahead with your posts. So you've already scheduled those 3 or 4, they're already set to go out. That's not to say that you can't then top up with, you know, random posts and bits and pieces that, you know, come up and, you know, the odd story and whatnot. But what you've actually done is you've got a base of good quality content that's objective based and it's designed to achieve your objective. And that's already in place. So what it means is that you're never having to post, you know, on the day or on the go, because what inevitably happens is you get to the end of the day and you think, oh, you know, I haven't posted, I haven't done anything in a few days, crikey, I need to do something. And what ends up happening is that you kind of settle for something a little bit subpar, or to be honest, what ends up happening is that you type a caption 3 or 4 times, you delete that caption, you don't do anything with it, and then you don't post, and you say, right, I'll come to this tomorrow, I'll get back to it tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and goes, right? And then all of a sudden you're 5, 6, 7 days and you haven't had any activity go out on your social media. So what we need is for that not to happen, okay? So when we plan ahead, we can schedule and we can stay ahead. And once you're in the rhythm of it, it's actually incredibly easy to do, okay? So allocating, you know, 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week just to gather the content for your 3 or 4 posts and then scheduling ahead is a necessity. To make that easier, it's all about content themes. So when we say content themes, this is you having a defined structure, okay? So each post is designed to achieve a different objective, and each of those objectives, or, you know, what we want to communicate, all ties back to really what we're trying to achieve with social media. So if we look at Collab Digital as an example, okay, what we've got at the bottom is a rolling calendar. So we've got Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, okay? So Monday, we're talking about social media training and our workshops that are coming up, okay? So that's what we need to post about that day. So I'm not having to guess what we post that day. I'm not having to guess what I use as that content. I know exactly what we need to be doing for that day. On Wednesday, we're talking about content creation. So we're talking about, you know, photography and videography. Friday, we're talking about staff highlights. So we're introducing one of our team members, or we're telling a bit of the story of what we've been up to that week. And on Sunday, it's kind of informing or educating, tips, hacks, tricks. What have we learned? When it comes to the next post, so from Sunday, obviously that next post will go on Tuesday, all right? But that Tuesday post will be a social media training post. So we're back to that. So as you can see, we've got this kind of continuous rolling structure of what we're pushing out. One, it makes it easy for us 2, it's consistent, which straight away is attractive for the audience. And 3, it's all objective based. So what we are doing is we're continuing to head down the pathway that we need to be heading, and it's structured, it's organized. So content theming is super important. What it allows you to do is have that structure, but it also allows you to plan ahead. So if we now are thinking about, okay, what we want to do is we want to schedule a week ahead, we need a structure like this to be able to do so, because otherwise we sit there and we guess, what should we post about? What should we do on this day? Or not? We probably haven't talked about that for a while. Should we do that? We don't want to be in that situation. What we want to be in a situation of having this defined structure to work forward from. So I hope that makes sense. The next part is cool. We're pushing out lots of content. We have a good looking page. We're starting to drive some engagement. How do we then manage this community? And look, the one thing I will say is that you are the mayor of your own community, okay? You can actually set the rules, and you can define what those rules are, and you can pretty much set the parameter of how people need to adhere to those rules. What we don't want social media to be for any of you is something that is a pain, okay? So straight away, us having that scheduled structure of content and understanding where we need to be, that should take away some of the big questions and the guesswork. Now it comes down to us managing this community and making sure that that it's enjoyable, really. So with that said, treat it like you are the mayor. So straight away, when it comes to moderating and managing, look, if someone's being a pain in the ass, don't be afraid to block them and remove them from your community. You are in control. There's no specific rules that you need to fit to. If someone is constantly challenging you, being unreasonable, and look, to be honest, what we do know is that some people on social media are crazy, okay? And they are not afraid to be crazy, and that's a challenge for us straight away. So with that said, look, don't be afraid to remove those people from your community. That said, there's a general expectation in this day and age from social media users now that if I ask a question or if I post a comment and I'm keen to find out more, that I'll get a prompt response. So something that we do need to ask ourselves is, how quickly are we responding? How quickly are we answering? General rule of thumb is that it shouldn't be any longer than 24 hours. Unfortunately, social media is not a 9 to 5 thing. And if we do really want good bang for buck, what we do have to think about is, if we look at audience behavior and if we think about usage, and again, if we tie it back to how we use social media, it isn't a 9 to 5. Activity and audience usage peaks at night. Okay, so at night, that's when we see more people active, more people engaging, more people asking questions. All right. So ideally, look, those questions or those comments are moderated or answered promptly. If they can't be done, then and there, within an hour, then it's certainly the next day. Okay. So what we don't want is social media to be a thing where we're pushing stuff out, but we're not actually absorbing anything and kind of interacting with it and moderating it and responding to it. Otherwise, what it ends up being is just a one-sided approach, and we can't have that. Social media is the only medium that we can actually have a two-way conversation with the audience. If we think about a newspaper ad, if we put a newspaper ad out, well, unfortunately, people can't ask that ad a question, but on social media, they certainly can. They can comment on that post, or they can message the page, and that's all in real time.
So Brent, one of the comments that you've made is that people are active at night. Is there a best time to post?
Yeah, look, I mean, generally, so the problem is with the algorithm, it's shifted mainly over to looking at a specific user's activity, okay? And how often they're active will then determine what they're actually served in their newsfeed. So let's say if I followed a whole lot of pages and I was connected to a whole lot of people, but I hadn't actually logged on to Facebook or Instagram in a couple of days, what I would end up saying is, I wouldn't see, when I log on, I wouldn't see content that is being posted on the day I log on. I would probably see content that is posted from, 1, 2, 3 days ago. And the reason that it's serving that to me is because it deems it being relevant to me, because I've previously engaged with it. My behavior has demonstrated that I'm interested in that content. Again, because of my own activity, I haven't been active enough to see that. So it's going to make sure that it does show it to me still, even though I log in a few days later. That said, if we keep that in mind, we can pretty much in a roundabout way say that, look, if we post at night, we will reach more people for free because there is more people active. That said, there has been a distinct shift in the way that people create content. A lot of businesses only post at night, okay? Now, that means that things are diluted a little bit, right? Because we're competing against a hell of a lot of other content that's being posted at night. What it does also mean is that there's a great big open gap, during the day and during, times that aren't at night for us to be able to post and still get good cut through. Really, what it's influenced by is who we're wanting to talk to, and then we can drill down further and understand, what they do for a job or what they do day to day. Are they a stay-at-home parent? And if that's the case, we can communicate with them, kind of anytime. Are they a tradesman? And if so, I mean, there's key times we can talk to that person, and 10:30 a.m. smoker time. So again, there's a few different variables involved in that, but look, rule of thumb, if we post at night, we get more sets of eyes generally, but it's not always the case. So yeah, unfortunately, not a fully clear-cut answer for that one. Cool. Excellent. So that's managing a community. Now, when we are again, we've got a good structure around creating content, and we are pushing things out, and we are managing and moderating. What we can do is begin to amplify our content, and we can do this organically. We can certainly do it through paid, and that's what we're going to talk about in a sec. But we can do it organically. Now, for those of you on Instagram, you'll be familiar with hashtags, okay? So hashtags really are a way for us to group our content together with similar content, okay? So the example that we've got on the screen is a brand called Samba Fire and Barbecue. Obviously, they sell charcoal for barbecues, right? So as you can see on the post that we created, what we actually did is we hashtagged barbecue. So what we've done is we've then gone into that category, right? That hashtag category. And what we're actually starting to do is engage with other people that are also hashtagging barbecue. So what it's doing is it's creating this direct link between us and this end consumer. So Samba is a brand that is sold in Australia and New Zealand. It's also available online. Some of this content that we're engaging with here is from all around the world. If we wanted to go a level deeper and create even higher relevance, what we could have done is hashtag barbecue New Zealand or barbecue NZ, okay? And obviously there's a few different ways of typing that. Really, this is just the way of us driving people back to our profile, because what we're actually doing is we're engaging with people that, look, these people could be our customer, or these people could be directly interested in what we're actually saying on social media. When we engage with the content that they create, they get a notification. What do you think happens? They then bounce back to our profile. So for most of you, look, there's a range of different hashtags that you could be using. It could be anything around localized geographic hashtags such as New Zealand, or hashtag Tauranga, hashtag Bay of Plenty, Hamilton, Auckland, whatever it may be. Then also it could be sports or nutrition or health related. Healthy eating NZ is actually a hashtag that is used. So you using that hashtag and then engaging with other people creating content within that hashtag could be a way for you to build the audience really, really quickly. That said, look, there's a ton of hashtags that would probably go against the grain, and it could be anything around fast food, and, all of a sudden you kind of, having a bit of a play with it that way. So there's so many different things that you could do. And it could be, like I say, lifestyle based, it could be food based, it could be education based, health based, whatever it may be. Hashtags, in short, are a way for you to extend your reach for free. And at the same time, on Instagram, to be honest, it's the easiest way to build an audience, because what ends up happening is for every post that you engage with, that person gets a notification. Inevitably, they then get curious, they bounce over to your profile, and if they see some good quality content that's nice and consistent and no red flags, they'll end up following you, okay? Or they end up engaging with your content, all right? Cool. Hope we've answered hashtags nicely. In a nutshell, social media is a long-term play. So what I don't want you to do is walk away from today and say, right, okay, I'm going to set my objectives. I'm going to focus on good content. I'm going to play with some captions, and I'm going to schedule up the next 2 weeks. I don't want you to then get at the end of 2 weeks and say, oh, that didn't work. Social media is a long-term play. It's kind of like a savings account, right? The more we add to it, the quicker, the momentum begins to build, right? The more time, effort, and energy that we put in the early stages to making sure that we've got a good base and that we have a plan and the strategies in place, we get the benefit as time goes on. So it is a long-term play. It's not a quick fix. At the end of the day, look, if we wanted to reach a hell of a lot of people really quickly, we certainly can do that, and we can do that through paid, which we're about to talk about. But for most of you, if we're working with a small budget, we're relying on organic only, we need to make sure that we are putting the time, effort, and energy in required to be able to get a result. Cool. Excellent. The next section is paid. Now, this section is all about you understanding how we need to be creating good quality content right now. This section won't take too long. There's not really a hell of a lot to it. And then we've got time for some Q&A. So I know we're running. I've talked a hell of a lot, right? We are running a little bit behind. I tend to get too excited. So look at me go. Anyway, paid strategy, focus, Brent. So what does a good paid strategy look like? Look, when it comes to marketing, consistency is key, okay? In terms of a best practice approach, if we think about a big funnel, okay, at the top of that funnel, it all begins with awareness. So people actually understanding who we are and what we do. As we work our way down the funnel, we start to get action, and that could be engagement on your page. It could be someone buying an ebook. It could be anything like that. And then as we get down the bottom, obviously it is conversion, right? So a good strategy really does begin with having a plan and being consistent. With that said, on social media and Facebook and Instagram specifically, there are differing ways to be able to advertise. Now, the problem is, for the most part, most people do boost posts. The problem with boosting is that it is not strategic. It is not the most effective way to run advertising on social media. And at the end of the day, if we're working with a small budget, we need as many people as possible. We need the best result possible, because otherwise we just will not get any cut through. And if we are boosting posts, we are not doing it the correct way. Now, a boost campaign only focuses really on one specific post or message on your page, whereas if we use Ads Manager, what it does is it allows us to build advert campaigns that are much, much more in depth. They are much more strategic. Now, luckily for you, and for those of you that do want to really embrace Ads Manager, we've got a video vault of how-to videos for how to create every type of ad campaign. Further to that, where to find Ads Manager, how to use it. So we're going to give you access to that as well. So Ads Manager, in a nutshell, is probably a tool created for advertisers specifically, and advertising agencies specifically, because there are some quite technical things involved with it. But that said, it is pretty easy to navigate once you get your head around. That said, it is actually quite easy to get a good result from, and that's what we're all about, right? Getting a good result. When it comes to setting up a campaign, there's a bunch of different variables involved in that campaign, right? And as you can see at the very beginning, much like our social media organic plan, what is the objective? What do we actually want to achieve from this campaign? We can set a budget, and we're in full control of that. We can set a schedule, again, in full control of that. We can target an audience, and I'm going to go in depth on audiences in the coming slides. We can also layer in some creative, and then obviously we can write a caption. So if you ever see something pop up in your stories or in the news feed and it says sponsored, sometimes that may be a boosted post. More often than not, it will actually be an advert campaign that's been created in Ads Manager. And if you clicked onto that ad, and if you went through to that Facebook or Instagram page, you wouldn't actually see that ad, okay? And that's a very clear indicator that that campaign has been created in Ads Manager and it is not a boosted post, all right? When it comes to choosing the objective, we actually get a bunch of different options in Ads Manager. So if I boosted a post, I really get one option, and that's to drive engagement. So I get to drive likes, comments, and shares on my post. Now, fundamentally, we know that the audience are not liking, commenting, and sharing as much as what they used to. So straight away, a boosted post has stumbled slightly. If we look at Ads Manager, we get several different objectives to choose from. Okay, now each of these objectives will do something slightly differently, and they all have their kind of place in the whole advertising ecosystem. We can choose from awareness. So awareness really is just someone seeing our content. No specific action is required. When they see our content, that's when we're charged, all right? So it's awareness. The next one is consideration, and under consideration, an action is required. So it could be traffic to a website, it could be engagement on a post, it could be an app install, someone watching a video, and what have you. And the last one is conversion. So conversion often involves money changing hands. For the most part, for most of you, look, using awareness and consideration objectives would be kind of the area that you play in. It's less about conversion and less about kind of that side of things. In terms of audience targeting through Ads Manager, look, I mean, in a nutshell, there's 400,000 different ways I can target every single one of you. And in fact, Colab alone has reached 5.8 million people here in New Zealand at any given time in the last 12 months. So do your math on that one. We've pretty much reached probably most of the people living here and a fair chunk of those traveling here, which hopefully a few more people traveling here soon, COVID free, of course. So when it comes to audience targeting, look, for each and every single person that uses the internet, there's 400,000 different ways I specifically can target you. And that's done to every single action that you take online. It stops short of identifying you personally and who you are specifically, okay? But all of your actions, so what you look at, what you buy, what you search, what you click on, who you're engaging with, what you're engaging with, all of these actions essentially build a data profile for you. And using that data profile, I can serve you an ad. Further to that, once you take an action on that ad, I can then serve you other ads and other messages. So quite quickly, you can see how cost effective this can really become, okay? If we think about traditional marketing, look, we're restricted to demographic targeting. So if I advertise on a radio station, look, I could choose a radio station that in theory has a target audience of, 18 to 35-year-olds. I know straight away that there could be a 55-year-old listening to that radio station. Same thinking with newspaper ads. Although, we can have one newspaper ad on one page. The problem is, how do I guarantee that someone's actually seen that ad? With the type of advertising we're talking about, people have to see it or people have to engage with it. Okay, so straight away, not only can we target more effectively, we're ensuring that we're actually achieving the objective that we set out to. Budgets and scheduling are always interesting. The boost mentality, unfortunately, has meant that we think it's normal to spend, $15 or $20 on a post and push that out for a few days. It's not an effective way of spending our money. If we think about, again, advertising on any other platform, if I said to them, if I went to the radio station, I said, right, I've got $12 to spend over 3 days, they're going to laugh at me, okay? So with that said, we need to be more strategic. And again, when we're forward planning, we get to be more strategic because it isn't just about boosting a post and hoping that post will then, get everything that we want to achieve, kind of achieved in a short space of time. We get to forward plan and have a fundamental structure to how we then run our ads. In terms of budgets, look, it could be as low as $100 a month. It could be as much as $10,000 a month. Again, it all depends on what that objective is. I won't go through this slide. This is really just a reference point for you, but this is really just about understanding what results can look like. And for us, a lot of these numbers have kind of, I guess, are the averages of what we can achieve. One of the key ones in there is around reach. For most of you, look, it is really about ensuring that you are reaching people. So if we look at reach, which is the fourth line, $2.50 to reach 1,000 people, okay? Now, if we talk about cost effectiveness, it is hard to compare any other means of advertising with that level of cost effectiveness. So we can spend $2.50 and we can reach 1,000 people. Again, if we spend $100, you can quite quickly see the scale of how this can kind of, cut through. So that's paid. Look, not a hell of a lot on paid as such. Not the biggest focus for today, but certainly we want to steer you in the right direction. With that said, we'll give you some resource in terms of videos that are how-to videos that you can tap into and you can learn and educate yourself as much as you want. So for those of you that want to go really deep, we've got the resource for you. Cool. That's
fabulous. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Brent, for that very comprehensive overview. what a wealth of information, and I'm going to go through and do a bit of an audit on the ANA Facebook page now, but I'm really glad that I've actually been spending my effort on Facebook, given the huge reach that has. There are some questions here, but I'm well aware that many of you will have to go. The questions are not going to be quick for Brent to answer, so we'll endeavour to get those answers out to you in due course. Yes. And just as a takeaway, I think I'm taking away making posts relevant and quality is a key thing. Of course, matching to my strategy and posting regularly, but maybe I don't need to post as often, which is perhaps a good thing I've learned today too.
Yeah, and that's a luxury, you know, because previously, a frequency of content was almost required, but now in the way that the algorithm has kind of shifted and audience behaviors have shifted, really it's quality over quantity. So we don't need to post as frequently. We get to spend more time on creating good quality posts, and that's really the structure of what we want everyone to be doing.
Excellent. There's a number of people that have come through thanking you very much for your presentation. And Brent is going to join us again, looking at creating videos for social media as well. So we look forward to having many of you attend that session too. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for your time, and ka kite anō.
Pleasure. Thank you, everyone. And if you do have questions, by all means, fire them through. And yeah, we'll go from there. Thank you.